Hey everybody, I'm Gerald Besner. Welcome to the SRV Trainer how-to video series. The place to be for everything you need to know about using your brand new SRV Trainer. All right, ready again? Let's go. All right, in today's video, I'm gonna show you exactly how to turn your youth model into a varsity model. So as a refresher, with the youth model, the SRV Trainer can be positioned in any one of the 8 fixed pinhole positions. That way you'll be starting at 3 foot 1 inches and all the way up to 5 foot 6 inches maximum rebounding and jump training height. Once your athletes grow out of that and they're jumping a little bit higher and they need extra flexibility, that's when you'd move over to the Varsity edition. So you can do so with the addition of the mast and winch assembly. Once you do that, you now have the ability to take your SRV Trainer, and in addition to using any of the 8 fixed pinhole positions on the stand, you can now put it in the mast pinhole position. Once you do that, you've raised your effective rebounding height to now 6 foot 1.5 inches, and you can extend the mast all the way up so that your effective rebounding and vertical height training can go up to 9 foot 7.5 inches. So the first step in converting this youth model into the varsity model is to take off the SRV Trainer and mast bracket. But before we do any of that, as always, making any adjustments, we want to make sure we lock all 4 wheels to make sure nothing rolls away on us. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to attach the worm winch assembly. So to do that, we have 4 nuts and bolts, and they require 9/16 wrenches. I've got 2 open end box wrenches here as well as a socket. The socket won't work for all of them because the actual assembly is in the way. So that's why in some cases I may need to use both of the open end box wrenches. So what we need to make sure we do is we need to line up the 4 holes in the bracket to these 4 holes and the one way down here in the winch assembly. So let's just get started with one. The bolt has to go through this side. Position it on the hole. Oh, and you just let it dangle as long as you're pushing on it. And then I'll take that lock nut and just get it started by hand so that it now is holding that. So now I can get the second one in. I like to do the top ones first. Again, just line up those holes. Take your lock nut. Just get it started by hand. That way nothing's gonna fall. Okay, and repeat the process for the bottom. We'll do the 3rd hole here. You may have to wiggle it around a little bit and get it flush so that the holes line up. And now that those 3 are done, the last one's a little bit trickier because you can see that this gear is in the way. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna angle it in there, maybe give it a little wiggle, push it through, and then put on that lock nut here. Okay, now all 4 in the right spot. Let's go ahead and try and tighten those up. Okay, so now we're just gonna tighten them up one by one. Again, we never tighten them completely because everything is a little bit on the crooked side. Make sure your socket's facing the right way. I like to do the socket ones first because you can just get them done a little bit quicker. So I'm just taking up that gap. I don't want to tighten them all the way, so just there. And that way they still have flexibility to move, find those clearance holes. So let me do the bottom one. Now this one, you can hear is hitting a little bit, but it's still a little bit quicker to use the socket. And we're not doing any damage to that wheel. Okay, and just so that's just hand snug. With the lock nuts, we can't tighten them anymore by hand, so we do have to use the wrenches. Now in this case, because I can't get the socket in the top here, it's gonna hit. So you can see I can get a shorter one, but it's still gonna hit. So what I'm gonna do is just use these guys here, lock it in, and you know, get them going best we can until they are snug. Okay, and then the last one, again, have a look down here. So this gear's in the way a little bit, so you just want to make sure you get your wrench on there and keep this one stationary and tighten as you can. Make sure you don't hit those gears with the wrench. Same process, it's just a little bit slower here. You just have to be a little bit more careful. You could potentially fit a socket in the back, but this is your safest bet. Okay, now that all four are hand tightened, I've gotten this to that position. I always want to give them that little quarter tight. So I'm just going to hold this one and push down on the back. Yeah, and I'll do the same at the top here. What I'll do is I'll show you in the top one. I just have it locked in now. That one now is not quite tight. Let's get it to that position where it's tight. And now I'm just going to give it that little push, quarter tight. Now I'll go opposite over here. Same thing, quarter tight. Last one. This one will probably need to be tightened a little bit more first. No, we're good there. So I'm just going to push down on one, opposite with the other, and that's quarter tight. Okay, so that's on nice and stiff. Let's move on to the next part. To take the SRV trainer off the mast bracket, we need to lift it up and get these pins out of these pinholes. But we've incorporated a really important safety feature, and that's this 1/4 inch safety pin. And what that does is when we go to lift up this unit at any time, it locks it from being able to slide up. And if you need to take it off for any reason, which we do in this case, just pull out that pin. It's on a lanyard, so it's gonna not go anywhere. It's gonna stay safe. Then take 2 hands, come straight up until they release, and then go and put this away somewhere on a soft surface so you don't wreck your floors. So the next step is just take the mast bracket up off of the stand. So to do so, just get your hand underneath, pull out the larger safety pin, and these 2 hands slide it all the way up and over. So the next thing we want to do is just pop off this plastic end cap. You can use your fingers or a screwdriver if you need to just pop it off. Even if it gets a little bit ruined, that's okay because you're going to get a new one with your mast and winch assembly anyway. Okay, so the next step is to take the mast and put it into the stand. So as mentioned, it's already got the plastic cap on the top here. This is where if you have 2 people, it's great. And this is why it's extremely important to make sure you've locked the wheel so this doesn't roll away on you. Come all the way up and then carefully slide it down. Now you want to make sure that the side, just watch your fingers here. You know, you might want to get a second hand to help you, but go very slowly. Once you grab it from the mast here, you don't have any chance of pinching until it sits down at the top there. Again, the most important thing is just to make sure that the side that has the scale on here is facing the slot in the back of the stand. And that's also going to ensure that this rivet nut that's going to help activate the winch assembly is in that slot as well and not hidden somewhere else inside the stand. So now you can just take the eye bolt that's included and screw it directly in to that rivet nut. Now, sometimes you'll find that it goes crooked or it might tighten there. What I would suggest is go right to the end and then just dial it back so that it's in a vertical position. Now, once that's done, you can take your pin shackle and just unscrew that, and you can take it right out and just find a way to get that slid right over top. You can turn it around and then reinsert that pin, and I will just do this. Let's just get it tight on there for now. It doesn't have to be super tight. We're going to open that back up later when we attach the cable. The next thing we're going to do is assemble this pulley assembly, and we're going to attach it into this screw hole right here. Okay, so I like to do this step when it's on the ground because it's a little bit tricky. First thing we need to do is take the bolt and feed it through this lock washer. Then we can set that down. Probably the easiest way is to take your other washers, put one on one side of the pulley, one on the other side of the pulley, hold them there with your thumb. Now take the pulley guard and make sure it slides over top. And you want to make sure those holes stay lined up. Give it a bit of a pinch to hold it in place. Then take your nut with the lock washer, feed it all the way through. So we'll just, again, we've got the bolt, we've got the lock washer, we have the one face of the pulley guard, we've got another washer, the pulley itself, the second washer, the back face of the pulley guard, and then the part that we're gonna screw in up top. So let's do that. So holding this all together, we're just gonna put it in one, and I do have the tool I'm gonna use, but first let's just tighten it by hand. Should go right in there. Now you can see I'm holding the pulley guard up at the top. Right now it's not critical. You can do it where it's down below. But as we tighten it, it's gonna become important how we do that. Okay, so we wanna hold the pulley in the top position, and right now I'm using my 9/16 socket wrench. So I'm gonna get that tightening. And as you can see, when you tighten it, it's gonna wanna rotate. And that's why I like to just hold my hand there and tighten, just slowly by hand, slowly by hand. And once you get to that last little bit, you wanna give it, now I can just feel it tight there. I'd give it a last little bit of a tug, and then that should stay in place. The reason why this is important, and this is the level that we're gonna be able to measure our effective rebounding height. So I'm actually going to slide, just by hand, it up here. And these numbers, when they correspond to this top face, that's the actual effective rebounding and vertical jump training height that you're working at. The other thing to note is that you don't really want to over tighten this, because then it can squeeze in on that pulley and stop it from rolling freely. We just want to make sure once it's tight that it does roll both ways. Okay, for the cable that comes supplied with the assembly, you have two different ends. One that has the loop attachment and the one that is bare. So we're gonna take that bare end and we're gonna feed it around the pulley from the left-hand side through to the right, making sure it goes in between the pulley and the pulley guard. So you can just reach up with your second hand and roll it through, and keep it coming all the way until the looped end is in about the right spot where you can loosen that pin shackle and attach it through. So let's go ahead and do that now. So making sure that your eye bolt and your pin shackle are already installed in the rivet nut on the mast, you can just undo that pin shackle, feed the loop of the cable through, and then retighten that completely. And just give it a good snug. You could lock that with the pin, but you don't need to. So now you can just pull that up, holding it vertical, use your second hand and just pull that through on the pulley, making sure that it rotates freely. Okay, so now taking the loose end, we want to feed it first through the drum, and there's a couple holes there, so you go all the way through and pull it around, making sure you have lots of slack. Now, you've got 3 holes in the side wheel, 1, 2, 3. And this is a really important step. You want to feed it through the big hole first, pull it through, give it again lots of slack. Then we want to double it back and push it from the outside into the wheel again. Grab the end, find the 3rd hole, bend that cable and tuck it back in. Once that's tucked in, you can see on this end here it's sticking through. You then want to take up all the slack. So starting from here, making sure it's tight through here, tight through this one, and now I can pull it back up through there and it's tight. So going back into a wide shot, you can see that we have lots of slack in this now, and that's what we need in order to be able to raise the mast up to its full height. Now I'm going to show you how to take care of that slack. So now you want to just use your one hand, pull up so that there's no longer any slack. Use your second hand and turn counterclockwise and get that wheel spinning. Now it's going to grab the cable and start feeding it around the drum. Now this is going to take a minute or two to take out the slack, but I like doing this by hand just to make sure that nothing slides out here and that it stays within all 3 of those pinholes and it starts overlapping on itself while it's feeding. And there you can get a good look at those 2 holes that it had to pass through to get it started. And those are important things to keep it locked in so that this does not slide out. So now if you look up at the pulley, you can see that everything is getting a little bit tighter. And if you look back down at the pin shackle and eye bolt, we're starting to see them move around. Now at this point, once we remove enough slack, We just want to use our hand and make sure that that's straight up and down. Again, keeping tension on this one. We're just going to take up the rest of that tension until everything is straight up and down. Okay, so that's it right there. We are in. Now, if you've gone too far, you'll see that this actually is starting to pull the mast up inside the stand. So I'm just going to give it a few extra turns, and that's how we're actuating the mast. I'm going to bring it back down, and then we'll show you the top where the mast sits on top of the stand, and I'll repeat that same process. So looking right here, the mast should be sitting flush on the stand in the low mast position. So when I do activate the winch, you can see it starts to separate and lift. And you'll start seeing those numbers on the scale, which are going to give you your accurate measurements for your vertical jump training as well as your rebounding. Great. So now we're going to get it back down to the low mast position. So we've also included a hole where you can just set that manual winch wrench in there if you want to keep it attached to the unit at all times. Otherwise, you can store it anywhere you like. The next step in converting your youth model into a varsity model, once your mast and winch assembly is all connected, is to take your mast bracket and slide it back down over the mast, over the stand, and insert the pin into the pinhole position where you want to start. Now, the thing to remember with this is that you always want to have the big end of the slot facing up. And the 1/2 inch safety pin is always going to be on your right hand side. So using that as a guide, never installing it like this, always like this. We're going to lift up over, position it over that, slide it right down. And for today, let's just pop it right into this hole position. So I've lined up the holes here and come around to the other side, and I will take that 1/2 inch pin and put it right through, give it a bit of a wiggle if you need to, until that ball comes all the way through, and your mast bracket is securely in place. Okay, so the last step is just reinstalling the SRV trainer. So using 2 hands, again, line up. I like to do it on an angle where I line up one side first, and then looking around the other side, just get it squared up. Now that it's inside the big holes, you just let it drop down into those slots. Most important safety feature with this is to prevent it from sliding up again, is to reinsert your 1/4 inch safety pin that goes all the way through. And now if I try and lift it up, it can't. Now that we've installed the SRV trainer on the mast bracket in one of the lower pin positions, just to make it easier to get it on, there's one very important piece of equipment that comes with your mast and winch assembly, and that's the secondary safety pin. We always tell people to keep that installed in the mast pin position at all times whenever the SRV trainer is being used on any of the 8 lower fixed pin positions. But since we want to use it in the mast position to be able to get that extra height for our rebounding and vertical jump training, let's install the unit on that top mast position. So the first step is we have to pull out that secondary safety pin, put it away somewhere safe. Then we're going to get underneath, pull out the 1/2 inch pin, push up our unit until the holes align, push it all the way through, and we are now in that mast pin position so that we can start rebounding from 6 foot 1.5 inches. Lastly, we want to replace that secondary safety pin. And the general rule of thumb is just to prevent falling. In case of any accidents, we want to put in the secondary safety pin through the highest hole available that you can see on your stand or on the mast. All right, now that we're up here in this position, you're going to want to move this mast up. So we have a separate video that shows you how to move the SRV trainer up and down on the mast. I hope you found that segment helpful. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. Go to our website or subscribe to check out all of our new videos. All right, now we want to see how creative you can get with your shooting, rebounding, and vertical jump training. So tag us on your socials with hashtag SRV Trainer so we can give you a shout out.